Oh, sorry, bud. Yeah, just.
What is up, everybody? Ethan Newberry, the Ginger Runner, here for another Ginger Runner Live. Very excited about tonight's episode because I'm in a different location. I'm in Seattle doing a road trip up here, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in the show. But we have a very special guest tonight. He's been on the show a number of times now. He's an old hat, regular guest, Ginger Runner Live frequent visitor. But something very important and incredible happened this weekend for this man, and that was the incredible win at Western States 100. The 2015 champion is here for tonight's show, Mr. Rob Krar. I'm very excited. For those of you who are watching live, welcome to the show. Very happy to have you. Grab your adult beverages or children beverages, sit back, relax, enjoy. Ginger Runner Live at number 72 begins now. Ginger Runner. Yes, welcome everybody. The people are already commenting that I needed to be wearing a deep V tonight. I apologize I didn't have the deep V in honor of my guest. I really wanted to show more cleavage. I'm super excited to have him back on the show, fresh off of an incredible win at Western States 100 this last weekend. I would say one of the biggest 100-milers in the world, easily one of the most famous and the original 100-miler. Here he is in all of his bearded glory and looking fresh as ever. That's what I'm most surprised about right now. He's just looking like nothing happened. Mr. Rob Krar. Yay! What's up, buddy? How are you? I mean, honestly, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Ethan. To start off,
of course.
Always a pleasure to join you on the show, and I'm feeling great. You know, it was a kind of a long drive home today, but we got it done, and I had a fantastic shower. I don't know what it is about showers. I'm feeling good. You know, I feel like I just ran 100 miles 2 days ago, but overall, nothing I'm too concerned about long term. So I couldn't be happier.
That's good to hear. One thing, being at Western States last year and seeing this, and let me know what condition you're in now, but seeing the elites and seeing you having won last year as well, hobbling the next day, actually having a little bit of a pain in the legs, it actually helps those of us in the elite mid-pack look at you guys with a little bit more realism. Are you in pain today?
Yeah, you know, literally every ultra I've run since I started this whole ride 2.5 years ago, I'm getting a little bit better, and that the length of time it takes to get over that initial really sore, limping, just bad off phase is getting shorter and shorter. So, you know, getting out of the car is pretty darn rough today. But, you know, if I'm walking around for a bit, I can almost walk with a normal stride, which is awesome. But don't get me wrong. If you saw me linger around the track for a couple hours after the race, I was pretty bad off for sure. And I was pretty bad off yesterday as well.
There's a great question already in the chat room. For those watching live, ask the questions. We'll relay them to Rob here during the live show. It's one of the cool things about doing it live with the live audience. This is from David Carmona. Rob, your first shower since when? When was the last time you showered?
I was very thankful. We have a friend in Auburn who literally lends us her house. They move out and they say, just go to our house whenever you want. They have the whole food spread laid out. So it was great. I got home. I got in the shower. I mean, I was a little out of it, but yes, I did have a shower after the race. I mean, it's awful when you finish that thing. You're covered in goo and sticky drink, and my beard is angry at me. So yeah, I take advantage of the shower as soon as I can.
So I think kind of how I want to start this is talking a little bit about Western States history, your Western States history. So you've run it now the last couple of years. Second place the first year you ran it. Last year, an incredible performance again, first place, total win last year, and a really amazing time of 14:53.22. That's about 11 minutes off of the course record there. This year, another big win, even closer to the course record, shaving off even more minutes with a 14:48.59, I believe is the official time. How did this year compare to the last 2 years for you, for your entire experience during the course of the 14 hours out there?
Yeah, each year was a bit of a different journey. I mean, the first year, 2 months before, I had no plans of running a 100-miler, and I qualified, and I decided to commit to it. So, 2 years ago, I remember the night before, sitting in an unconditioned apartment, wondering what the hell I got myself into, questioning whether I'd even finish. So, amazing experience. I finished second at 10 the first year. And then the second year was, a culmination of a year-long goal, which I was, something I hadn't done in so long. And it was incredible for so many reasons. And then, this year returning, I feel like I'm at a really good place in my life right now. I'm at more at peace with myself than I've been in many, many years. So I went into the race. I wouldn't say more lighthearted. I was a bit more open to the whole experience, and entered the race pretty confident and very purposeful during the race. But it was, another really tough, grueling journey along that trail.
I had AJW on last week, and we talked a little bit how strategy was going to come into play this year for a lot of the elite men, because many of them had run it before. Many of them had run it last year. Before I even get further into this question, I completely spaced on this. This is road trip brain. I have to also commend Magdalena Bollet on an incredible performance as well. Her 100-mile debut and a big victory. I'm going to be emailing her and trying to get her on the show as well. We have a lot of stories I know that I want to talk about just from the race weekend, and some pretty cool stories from you as well. So I wanted to make sure that I put that out there and congratulated Magda, because that's a pretty big win. So AJW was on the show last week, and we talked a lot about strategy and how it would come into play specifically with this race, having a lot of the elite men having raced this race before, being familiar with the course, being familiar with the conditions, hot and all that kind of stuff. Did you come into this race with any sort of strategy where at mile blank you would make a push, or you would hang with the leaders, or you would give them a gap, or let the runs go, or any of that kind of stuff? Was there any strategy this year?
It's always really important for me to run my own race for as long as I can, and that was my strategy going into it. I would say I was very focused on trying to determine strengths and weaknesses of the foreigners who I hadn't raced before, Francois and Thomas. It was a challenge. I couldn't really, I didn't pick up any weaknesses. So it was, it took till, I guess, Michigan Bluff, where Francois dropped back a bit and I put in a strong move there. But I suppose I had a lot of personal strategy. The heat was definitely going to be a factor, and it was. And I was using a lot of heat management, and I was definitely more purposeful in my moves during the race. I love running with Dylan. I remember the very first year, going in that race blind. Dylan was incredible to guide me through the canyons, let me know what's coming up. Really shows what an amazing person he is, and an athlete. And this year, when a gap formed, in the past I may have just been content to sit back and let a gap form. And this year I passed people very aggressively to get in the tail back on Dylan and soak up his good energy. It was a bit of a different experience this year, but in a good way.
We also had talked about AJW and I about how we knew this year, because there's a lot of fast guys. I mean, you, Dylan, Varner, Francois, Seth Swanson from last year. A lot of these guys are speedy dudes, and we know that that Western States isn't necessarily a technical 100-miler. So we knew that speed was going to be a big factor here. And we even talked about the fact that there would be carnage, that there was going to be guys who pushed too hard, or burned their engines out too early, or made moves at the wrong time. How were you able to, within yourself, pick that right speed to click into, hang in there, and save a lot of that energy for the last 38 miles or so, when you really began to kick it into gear? Was there anything that you did specifically?
Yeah, for sure. Having the previous two races experience, kind of knew what kind of pace I thought I was capable of handling, even with the heat. Definitely, you got to take the heat into consideration in this race. And I had a rough idea of where I should be at certain aid stations. And we got to dusty corners, and I think we were 5 minutes ahead of record pace. And it was important for me to back off at that point. And I let Seth and Francois and Thomas pull ahead at that point. So yeah, there was a lot of strategy in terms of pace. Initially I thought there'd be more people together at the river, but then, the heat is such a huge factor. And when we have a pack, a fairly large pack, 20 miles into the race with that heat, I figured there was going to be a lot of people that were going to be suffering sooner rather than later. So I was very cautious with the pace throughout the race. And a big goal was to hit Green Gate feeling better than I did last year. So I dialed it in a bit on Cal Street. I think I still ran fairly strong, but last year from Green Gate to the finish was a real struggle, and I wanted to feel a little more comfortable this year, and I think I accomplished that.
Did the heat bug you a lot this year, or do you feel like you kind of got on top of it early on?
Yeah, I mean, I got on top of it early on. I feel it got hotter sooner in the day compared to last year, and I think it was a couple degrees warmer overall. So heat management was huge. I was actually surprised to see that more people weren't utilizing ice more often and as early as I was in the race. But everybody has their own strategies. I think a lot of people did heat training as opposed to heat management. So to each their own on that. I think it's there's no one right way to manage heat.
Yeah, Kimosabe75 in the chat room is actually asking specifically that. You didn't do any heat acclimation. What was your trick with dealing with the heat this year?
Yeah, same as last year. So ice is king. So starting at my first opportunity with crew, which was Duncan Canyon, mile 24, started doing ice in the hat, ice handkerchief, and North Face maybe these really great cutoff arm warmers that I was stuffing ice in both sleeves. So really, I feel highly effective way to manage heat out there.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask a little bit about the gear because it looked like, especially in the river crossing, there's a nice close-up photo of you coming across, and the hat looks to be a specific sort of hat where you can just shove a bunch of ice into it. And then the arm warmers, were those specifically designed to take big cubes of ice and stuff as well? Yeah,
well, the hat's so it's a new performance trucker hat that's coming out. So it's a trucker hat geared towards performance running. So very breathable, slightly shorter bill as well to keep, when you're climbing up steep slopes and that bill's too long and get in the way. So yeah, it's a cool new product that's coming out. Other than that, there's no ice pockets. I was just throwing ice in there. And then the arm sleeves were, the arm sleeves were just arm warmers that were cut off to, I think, 10-inch length with a hem at the top so it didn't get stretched out. And, they were awesome. They were really, really key this year for sure.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of the guys were dealing with some sort of arm warmer. I guess it's not arm warmer, arm coolers at that point because you're constantly keeping them wet and filling them with ice at aid stations. Yes. A good question from CTAM79. Krar, did you always plan to pass the leaders at Forest Hill aid station like last year? If the race was only 62 miles, it could have changed your place. I think he says it could have been second place. Did you plan on passing people at mile 62, or is that something that came into your mind later in the race when you kind of got an idea of who was where? Yeah, well, in my mind, it's always a 100-mile race. So, it was mile 55 coming out of Michigan Bluff where Francois showed a bit of weakness and dropped back, and I took advantage of that. So I think I rolled through Forest Hill with about a 5-minute lead, and at that point it's still 38 miles is a long way to go, and you got a really tough section along Cal Street, very exposed, very hot. So I stayed aggressive, but I also I would say I was taking calculated risk along that section. Now, a lot of these guys that you're running with out there, top 10, top 20 guys, you know them. You've run other races with them. You've run past Western states with them. You know them on a social level as well. Are you guys talking out there? Are you communicating with each other? Are you helping each other out? I mean, what happens in that elite group? Because a lot of you were running within 40, 50 seconds of each other for the first 50 miles or so. What kind of goes on in that front pack? Yeah, I'd say the first 10 miles or so, there was a decent amount of talking amongst the lead pack. I'm always very, very quiet out there, so I wasn't participating in that talk, and that's just the way I like to be. It's a very magical thing. Every race is magical for me. You put so much time and effort into it. I just want to soak up every moment of it. It's probably a little selfish, but I just want to soak in as much as I can for myself out there. And
I would say this year with the heat, I think a lot of people were starting to hurt earlier than they may have expected, and it got pretty quiet quicker than I thought. And past 10, 15 miles, there was very, very little talking. There was a few words spoken between Dylan and myself and Seth and myself, but I would say from mile 20 to the end, other than a few words at cruise stations, I can't think of talking at all. Yeah, I was just in my zone.
What do you think was the lowest point for you in the race? Was there ever a moment of like, oh, I don't know if I can get to the next aid station, or were you really pretty dialed this year?
Yeah, I would say I'm thankful I didn't have any terrible lows. I think I did a better job with my nutrition this year. Last year, I had a lot more significant peaks and troughs in my energy level, and I was really keeping up on my calories this year, and I think that really helps. Yeah, I mean, there's always low points. You just and it can come and go so quickly. You're around the corner feeling great, and the next corner your energy's kind of sapped. But I was able to refocus pretty quickly and stay strong pretty much the whole race.
What did you do nutrition-wise?
So gels were my primary. I was doing a new gel from Goo called Tastefully Nude, which is essentially no flavor. Yeah. Which was awesome because in any 100-miler, I think it's tough getting calories in late in a race. And when you add significant heat, it becomes especially hard. So those gels worked out really well. Then I was using their Roctane energy drink as well. Did some gins here and there, did some watermelon, but kind of stuck to what I've used in the past, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, so fairly simple recipe. That's good to hear. All I heard and read all weekend were just stories of people getting to the bottoms of canyons and puking their guts out for an hour and then turning around and trying to drag themselves up out of the canyon and stuff like that. It seems like your nutrition, which has worked for you in the past, seemed to work fairly well at this point. Do you ever run into issues late in races where a certain flavor doesn't work anymore and you have to switch, or do you ever have those like nutrition emergencies, I guess?
Yeah, I'm thankful I have a pretty strong stomach. I puked once in an ultra, and that was with about 10 miles to go at Run Rabbit Run last year. And I think that was my mistake in that I think I was consuming fluids and nutrition as if it was daytime, and it was actually really cold. And I think I just put too many calories, too much fluid in my stomach, and let her rip with about 10 miles to go, but felt great after. So maybe it's not too much of a bad thing.
We got cat butt there. We had some cat butt in the back of the.
Oh yeah, that's B. Sorry, what was the question again? I know it was about nutrition.
Yeah, if for some reason like there's a certain flavor or you have any sort of nutrition emergencies late in races. Yeah,
well, it's kind of funny. So last year for Western States and Leadville, I can't remember what the flavors were, but I had a single flavor of gel for most of the race, and like I said, it's just tough. It's running 100 miles is tough. When it gets hot, it makes it even tougher getting the fluids in. And I definitely created a taste aversion to those gels at each race, and I can't consume those anymore at this point. So yeah, no emergencies, but it's always a challenge maintaining the energy level for such a long period of time.
Yeah. Got some great questions in the chat room. If you are watching live, ask away. We're going to be kind of transfer these questions to Rob in this live format here. This is a good one from Akimasabe75 again, but it was something that I wanted to talk to you about. Having a crew and a pacer, or a pacer. In your case, you don't use a pacer, but you have a pretty outstanding crew. Do you have any advice for people who maybe are running these long races where there are crew and pacers allowed? What is your theory? What is your preference on both of those?
Well, I'm very thankful to have had the essentially same crew for 3 years in a row. Obviously, my wife, Christina, our good friend, Aaron, and our friend from Salt Lake City, Bryce. And, Western States, if you want to maximize crew stations, you really need 2 crews. And it's a huge day. I mean, I think the A crew needs to drive 240 miles throughout the day to hit, maybe 4 or 5 aid stations. It's not too far behind for the B crew. So it's a big day, and I'm very thankful for that. I've chosen not to race with the pacer the last few races, and that's a personal choice for me. Like I said, I really get into a zone. I feel I can take care of myself between the aid stations. but I think pacers can be very advantageous, and that's something people should take advantage of. Definitely for their first 100 miles. I did my first year at Western States. Yeah, and it's experience. Like I say, it's a very long and hot day for the crew and pacers. I think pacers need to take care of themselves. I mean, when you're up at 3 a.m. and you start your pacing duties, 10, 15, even 20 hours later, you need to take care of yourself as well. So you need to be cognizant of what your pacer's up to throughout the day. Take care of them. And then crew, yeah, practice your crew stations. It's a long race. You don't have to stress out. Take a few extra moments, even a few extra minutes to keep things calm and collected at the aid stations. I think that having a non-stressful aid stop and having good energy running out of it is really important.
A good question from Francisco Benavides Jr. Rob, do you feel like running the Canyons 100K helped you? Will you race it again next year?
Oh man, the Canyons was huge for me. So I ran Lake Sonoma 2 weeks before, and it was a DNF. I don't drop out of races very often, and it definitely stung. It was also only 2 weeks after I left a job that I'd been working for 12 years, and in the back of my mind, the worst case scenario was leaving work and then shit hitting the fan and everything falls apart. So it was a rough start. So to come back 2 weeks later and have what I consider to be one of the best runs of my life in the Canyons was huge for me. I didn't necessarily need the course knowledge, but it was great to get a refresher. And I came out of that with a huge, it really helped my confidence, and I got into a great training block after that. So I'm not sure if I'll go back next year, but I think it's a great race for anybody that wants to cut their teeth on the Western States course, whether they're racing it this year or plan on in the future, to get in those canyons and get on Cal Street. I don't think there's a better opportunity than the Canyons races.
This is a good question from one of our viewers as well, talking about weighing the runners this year was a bit different than it was in the past, in the sense that it was not required. Did you find that you went into aid stations? Did you need to do any of the weighing, or was it something you bypassed? And was it something that maybe contributed to a faster time for you? Did you feel less inhibited by the fact you didn't have to stand on a scale for 30 seconds at an aid station?
Mm-hmm. So there was no weighing during the race at all. They weighed you the day before when you checked in. Mm-hmm. So I think the way it changed the race was, when it comes down to it, getting weighed 4 or 5 times throughout the race is not a whole lot of time, maybe 2 minutes max. What it did allow at a couple of aid stations was, in the past, you had to set up your crew aid station after that checkpoint. So to have the opportunity to have your crew before that spot, for me, I like that because I can go grab what I need from my crew, then walk to the aid station. I love grabbing watermelon sometimes, so that helped out. But I think more importantly, what it did was, I think a lot of people saw the weigh station because it's manned by the medical crews, and I think people felt a little intimidated going through there. They were afraid to let people, the medical staff, know how they might truly be feeling. So I think it took a little bit of risk out of the race, and I think it's a good idea. It sounded like whatever information studies they're trying to glean from the weigh stations they got, and it didn't serve a meaningful purpose anymore, and they took it out. And I think it was a good idea.
A really great question from Jeff McLaughlin. What kind of things are going through your mind in the first 20 miles versus the last 20 miles? Is there a change in mindset? Is it about survival? For Rob Krar, how is it different?
Yeah, I mean, the first even half of the race, it's really just about whittling away the miles. I mean, we're running a pace that, for me, I think most of the runners, that we're not used to in training. So when most of my training runs are in the 6:30 to 8 minute range, and you're running, especially up the escarpment, 10 plus minutes, I think. Yeah, you just need to accept the slower pace and think long term and settle in. Just find peace with yourself for a long period of time. and then just never know what to expect. Last 20 miles of the race depends how the races has gone over the first 80, but it's a totally different world. I mean, I'm in the suffer zone. I'm in my dark place, I like to call it. It's crunch time. It's patience first and then compete, and I'm competing those last 20 miles. So sometimes there's a lot of growling out there. I go to a dark place, but I love it. It's a totally different, the first 20 compared to the last 20.
This is something I've just been kind of wanting to talk to any of the elites about, since it's been such a hot topic lately. There's been articles written about it and stuff like that, overtraining syndrome and putting in tons of miles. And is it something that's going to be a problem for a lot of these athletes and stuff like that? Are you concerned at all about any like future races? Are you going to be taking a break now that Western is kind of behind you? I know that I believe you still have some races left in the season. We've talked about it before. Is this anything that you've had to deal with on any sort of small scale or anything at all? Just OTS in general and kind of the discussion that's been going on about that.
Yeah, I mean, overtraining syndrome or adrenal fatigue. I think there's various names out there. I think it's really important to keep in the back of your mind. Training for anything, but I think especially ultras. So back in 2006, 2007, I was training for the roads, and I went through 2 bouts of what I consider adrenal fatigue syndrome, where I was comfortably, well, maybe not comfortably, but nailing 100-mile weeks with great workouts, and quite literally 3 days later, I couldn't run 4 miles, and essentially I left running. I quit running twice because I thought I could never come back. That's how quickly it can hit you and how significantly. So I think it's something to consider. It's training for 100 miles is very significant. The races, I think you really need to respect the recovery from each one. I'm fortunate to have those experiences in my back pocket at this point. I think I recognize, it's a fine edge. I want to do everything I can in my training to maximize my potential in the races, but I recognize now how important running is to my health and happiness. And I never want to go back there. So I'm very careful. You need to be careful with your training and recovery. And I think if people are cognizant of that, they can, it'll go a long ways in staying healthy in the long term.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's been, a lot of people have been talking about it. A lot of local runners and stuff like that. There's always that buzz and like are people overtraining or am I overtraining? And do I feel the adrenal fatigue and stuff like that? I feel like it can affect anybody. It doesn't necessarily need to be an elite. I think it can affect anybody, but that's really interesting to hear that you've managed to kind of get through it and to continue to perform really, really well. That actually helps kind of make me feel a little bit better about training really hard. We had a great question here from David Swinburne, a frequent viewer of the show and a Patreon supporter. What's up, David? I hope you got my email. He is asking, with Western states getting more and more popular, have you noticed the area ever getting overcrowded, even though it is a 100-mile course with spectators, drones? And this is a question I'll dovetail in there. I know that there's a number of film crews out there now that are filming and documenting everything. And with the popularity of apps and being able to do social media and stuff like that, has Western states specifically, since it is such a big scale race, has that changed in the last few years? Have you noticed it get more popular or changed for the negative?
I've raced it 3 years now, and I personally haven't seen much of a change. The race is always capped at, I believe, 369 official starters. So you're always going to have, it's always going to have that going for it in terms of how big it can get and then the impact it can have on the trails and the towns. I was actually surprised not to see any drones this year because they kind of exploded over the past year or two. But yeah, I think they do a good job. To get to some of these aid stations, you have to drive, then take a shuttle. So I think they do their best to handle the crowds, and they can only get so big with that many runners. So overall, I think I haven't noticed much of a change in the 3 years I've been doing it.
Question from Christopher Lucania. Rob, how do you feel about the river crossing? Refreshing and invigorating, or difficult and energy sapping? Or maybe a bit of both?
Maybe a bit of both. Like I would say overall more energy sapping. At the canyons, At the Canyons 100K, I got there totally blasted, and that was the plan. I really wanted to work down to the river, put myself in the hurt zone, and then kind of mimic how I might feel at Western States. And I was fortunate to have a decent lead when I got to the river, and I spent 3 minutes literally still laying in the river. And then I didn't feel a huge rush to get back into my normal stride, so I kind of walked it off for a little bit. But Western States is different. The last update I had was I had a 5 or 6 minute lead. So this year I didn't feel okay laying in the river. So I got across and got going. But it's really cold, and you go from being super hot to not super cold, but my feet and my legs got pretty tight, and my left adductor tightened up on the far side when I tried to get out of the river, and I had to pause for a few moments. And then you go straight into a pretty steep 2-mile climb. So it was actually a pretty big challenge for me. It took me almost a mile to get back into my normal running stride for especially my Achilles and my foot area in general to loosen up. So, if I could walk across the bridge, I'd probably choose that as opposed to getting in the water.
Someone actually referenced you pausing after getting out of the river, and they were asking, what happened? Were you okay? What was going through your mind? And we just found out organically that it was a tightened adductor, and you were just dealing with that?
Yeah. Just tightened up. It's just an odd movement. You're used to doing for the most part, the same movement for 7 to 8 miles at that point. So you crawl into a river, and you got to make a giant stride to stabilize yourself, and it just kind of like seized up on me. But you got to stay cool and collected at times like that. Bryce, my crew on the other side, was watching me go across, and he was like, "Rob, what the hell are you doing, man? Get going!" But it loosened up fairly quickly, and it was a bit of a balancing act the rest of the race with that adductor, but it never fully seized up on me, thankfully.
Now California is dealing with a terrible drought. This year is awful. Where the water levels, a lot of those rivers that would normally have water, maybe even little creek crossings where you could maybe pick up extra water or dip your head or your bandana in there for cooling in previous years. This year, I imagine a lot of those were dried up. Was the river crossing easier because it was shallower? Was it the same? Was it different? How was that?
So my understanding is there's a reservoir upstream, and they control the release for rafting purposes. So the current was actually the same. I actually thought it might have been actually even a bit higher, which is possible. I think I may have crossed just a little bit earlier. I think they just release a giant amount of water at a certain time of the day, and the rafters kind of coordinate their trips to coincide with that release of water. But it was pretty strong. Yeah, I think if you lost grip of that cable, you think you were going downstream a little bit before one of the kayaks got you.
That's really interesting. I was always really curious about that. I wanted to start talking briefly about the course record, because throughout the day, this was one of the most to be able and to have to follow online via tweets from Iron Far or from Andy Jones Wilkins, or for people who were on the ground seeing you at aid stations and stuff. It was like clawing your hair out, because we're getting updates like he's 15 minutes up on course record, he's 4 minutes up on course record, he's back to 10 minutes up. During the course of this race, I imagine 100 miles takes you to a point where all you're trying to do is finish the damn thing. But when you are so close to a course record, it's your crew giving you updates like you're 30 seconds back, you've got this amount of time, you've got someone behind you by this gap. Were you chasing it at all, or was there a point when you just went, I just want to win this damn thing, that is my only focus, let's just get to the high school track?
Yeah, well, I'm sure this is going to be the most popular question over the next few weeks, but
yeah.
I'm thankful I wasn't as stressed as everybody else out there. I had course record pace marked out on my bottles each time I passed a cruise station. The purpose of that for me was to gauge my effort throughout the course of 100 miles, because it's a long way. I've done 5 of them, but you still, again, it's such a slower pace than you're used to in training that you can get caught up in a fast pace early on. So I had that record in the back of my mind. There's no doubt about it. But I was cognizant of the heat of the day. That definitely threw a wrench in the goal of breaking the course record. at dusty corners, I was 5 minutes ahead, and I just thought that pace was too hot, so I dialed it in and or dialed it back and let Seth and Francois and Thomas pull ahead of me. So I was using course record pace as a gauge. Of course, yeah. To break the Western States course record would be amazing. Would have been icing on the cake. But my primary goal was to bring home another cougar, and you have to be. It's such a fine line. I was treading out there between success and failure. Pushing it a little harder at certain points in the course could have got me the course record, but it also could have caused me to have a terrible last 20 miles and cramp up or DNF. So, it's calculated risk. I can't be happier. I mean, what an amazing ride it's been the last 3 years. And I can't be disappointed in what I did out there, despite missing the record by 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely not. On a very hot day, you managed to do something a handful of people have done. Absolutely incredible, really. And I encourage any of you who are watching live to, I believe I Run Far has a video of it, but Rob coming into the track and running around it's less than a quarter of a mile, but running around the track to the finish line. I could tell when I saw that video that the last thing on your mind at that moment was the course record. It wasn't you trying to sprint around the track and get it. I mean, you're leaping around and high-fiving people, and it's like you were there to win it, and you did. And it's a damn fine video to watch. I want to talk a bit about that as well, especially Gunhild. I want to talk a bit about her and kind of your experience running her in. But before that, Rob, you get an automatic entry into next year's Western States. Are you going to come back, and are you going to go for the three-peat?
Western States has literally changed the course of my life. What an incredible ride I've had. I feel like I've accomplished everything I want to at this point in my career, and I'm going to take a pass next year. I will definitely be back to Western at some point. What an amazing race experience. I would encourage everyone to, take advantage of it, whether it means racing or pacing or crewing or volunteering. But for me, there's so much more to explore. Got a lot of projects I like to tackle, and Western States has, for the most part, kind of led my life, been the focus of my life for over 2 years now, and I think it's time to step aside and explore some new opportunities.
Well, that's pretty cool to hear that you will be back at some point, and you still have other things that you want to go do and explore and stuff like that. I got my first qualifier this year for Western States. I'll be putting my name in the hat. If I get drawn, Rob, you got to come pace me for 50 miles. That's the only thing. You got to come do it. There's lots of this delicious beer, I'm promising you.
Nice. Yes. Cheers. So that's great. Best of luck.
We'll see. It's one of those, like, you put your name in the hat and you hope for 10 years, your name will get drawn at some point. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, I'm going to be throwing my name in the Hard Rock Lottery this year. So I think we will have equal odds.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
We'll see what happens.
In the San Juans. I want to hear the story from your perspective. One of the biggest videos that's come from Western States this year is Gunhild Swanson finishing as the oldest female to ever finish Western States, 70 years old, in 29:59:54, 6 seconds to spare before the official cutoff. You ran her in for since Robie Point. I think you had your flip-flops on. You had come back out to watch that last hour, because that last hour is one of the most emotional and incredible hours of the race. What was going through your mind? Why did you come back out? Why did you run her in? Like, what was that story that happened that day?
Yeah, I knew this would be my last Western States for maybe a couple of years, and I wanted to soak up as much of the experience as I could. And I remember last year watching the last hour or so of the Leadville finishers, and it was one of the most emotional hours I'd had in a long time. And I wanted to experience that at Western States. And the track is great, but Robie Point is an amazing point as well, because it's do or die time for a lot of people. It's crunch time, whether difference between euphoria or supreme disappointment. So I thought Roby Point would be a good spot. I don't want to take anything away from Gunhild's crew, because they're the ones that spent 99 miles with them and got her through that point. I had no plans of running her in, but she came by, and I just got caught up in the energy and the emotion of it. And it was incredible. I mean, she never walked a step from Roby Point to the finish line, and all it would have taken, and it would have been understandable, was one tiny little walking break. It's like, well, maybe I'll walk this hill and then power to the finish. But she kept this incredible effort, incredible pace to the finish line. So to experience the track twice, I almost feel selfish to have done that twice, but what an amazing experience. One of the highlights of my ultra running career, to have joined her for the final mile of her race. And 6 seconds, I mean, you can't make that stuff up. What a story.
Yeah.
It's amazing. What an example she's setting for so many people.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the video clip has made its rounds. There's a number of them now, of her coming in and finishing at 29:59:54, and it's overwhelming how a 6 to 15 second clip of a 70-year-old woman crossing the line at Western States, just 6 seconds to spare, but the hundreds of people that are swarming around here and cheering as the community supports her, it like idealizes the entire trail running community. It is really, really cool and special. And I have to say, man, hearing and seeing the pictures of you running with her, and it's this really cool moment. It's a really special thing to see the person who won the race, was the first person to cross that finish line, come back 15 hours later and run the last runner in. It really is special, and a really, really cool thing. I definitely plan on getting her on the show, because I've heard that she is a pit bull and an incredible personality and a really wonderful person. Also a Washingtonian like myself. So I can't wait to get her on the show to talk to her about what it was like to run with Rob Krar for the last mile of Western States. I'm sure her story is much more like, he's amazing, he's a rock star, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Not to use a cliche, but the energy was electric. It was incredible. And, I don't keep my emotions fairly well under control, but I'd say that was the most excited and pumped up I've been in years, especially when we hit that track and it was so close, rounding that corner. And we rounded the last corner. I stopped where the barriers were set up, and I looked at the clock, and it was so close. I think the clock might have actually been off a couple of seconds as well. So in my mind, she only had 2 seconds to spare. Oh. And just 1,000 thoughts came through my head. I thought, very quickly, like, what would happen? Really, they're really not going to allow her to finish if she's 2 seconds off. It was just an incredible experience. So thankful for it.
Great question again in the chat room. Do you see yourself running at age 70? Is that something that you would like to do?
Oh man, I don't know. I think I'm learning more and more of the importance of activity, physical activity. So maybe it won't be running, but I'll be doing something. I think keeping active in some way or the other, being outside, I think that's the key, is important for overall happiness and health. And yeah, I'll be out doing something for sure.
Let's talk a bit about gear briefly. What sort of gear did you rock? Stuff that maybe helped you in these specific conditions. Stuff maybe that you can recommend to other runners who are looking to conquer a hot 100 or even Western States. Was there anything that you used that maybe you haven't before and you really liked, or things that you regularly use and enjoy gear-wise?
Sure. Well, we start at the top. I started the race with Jewelable sunglasses. My first year, I didn't wear any shade.
I'm going to interrupt you because I totally realized that we can give a pair of Jewelable sunglasses away tonight. Nice. I'll let you continue with that, but the contact at Jewelable was like, hey, let's give away a pair of Jewelabos. They're brand new, like the really nice glasses. I'm going to pull up the exact name of them because they sounded awesome. And I think what I will do, Rob, is probably the same sort of thing that we've been doing, where if you want to come up with a trivia question, I'll give you time. We can talk about your gear and stuff like that. We can even do it towards the end of the show here in just a couple minutes. But if you want to come up with a trivia question and email me the answer, we can get an actual winner tonight. I just want to make sure that I get the name of the Jewelbo. They are the Venturi with the zebra light lenses. We'll be giving away a pair of those right now. This is perfect. perfect opportunity.
Well,
So yeah,
that's great.
keep going.
Well, the Venturis are great. Great pair of shades. They're not what I wore, actually. I got to the race and I wasn't paying attention, and one of my cats knocked over the shelf that my shades sit at and had a giant scratch. I wore a different pair, but I was wearing them. But that's great. It leads into the question for the contest.
Perfect.
Which is, what are the names of our 2 cats?
Okay, email me, Rob, so I know the answers, so I can look for them in the chat room.
Okay. Yes. So starting for head to toe. So Jubal sunglasses early in the race, and then I went to a hat starting at mile 24 at Duncan Canyon. For me, I like to keep things simple, and a hat and shades is a little too much, a little too complicated for me. So I went straight to hat after that. New North Face Performance Trucker hat that'll be coming out soon. That was key for holding the ice throughout the race. Handkerchiefs, courtesy of Christina. Filled those up every opportunity I had. A great way to just cool down. A great part of the body. Goes a long way. Took my shirt off at Duncan Canyon. Again, like to keep it simple, keep it out of the way. I was in Better Than Naked North Face shorts, which are great shorts, very breathable, dry quickly, have awesome pocket arrangement as well. I went here and there. Sometimes during the race, I was carrying a Nathan Phantom pack, which is what I think is the most simple, straightforward waist pack you can get. Just one zipper, one pocket, very streamlined. And I had my goo gels, gins. What else did I have in there? Some Nathan power wipes. Just various things. But it's a great belt. And then I had a Nathan handheld that I had throughout the race. I was filling up with goo, Roctane drink, and a new flavor Goo was working on, black tea. Was what I had in there. Yeah, it's a good one. It's a little more subtle than the other flavors. I think it's going to be really great, especially late in a race. I think the more subtle the flavors, the better late in a race.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had my picky bars at the aid stations. And then going further down, Smart Wool socks. I use a version that's a little higher than you've used in the past. A couple races, Run Rabbit Run, especially last year, I got a lot of junk in my socks from running through terrain. So these were just over ankle high, and they're really awesome. Very comfortable. Kept everything out. I actually changed them a couple times, not because of the socks, but when you're running Western States on a hot day, your shoes are always wet. And last year at Leadville, in my darkest moment, I switched out socks, and it's almost like having a shower. It felt so good. So I switched my socks out twice during Western States just for that little bit of mental rejuvenation, and that went a long way. And then to answer the the next question, I'm sure, is what shoes was Rob wearing? I wasn't wearing North Face shoes. I am really excited to be working with them on a brand new shoe that's going to be coming out probably 2016, 2017. But yeah, that's it, head to toe.
I think we talked about those new shoes that you were talking about at the Flagstaff show as well. I'm pretty excited to see what those are. Are your cats' names B and Mo?
That's it.
We have a winner. The winner, according to my chat room, the first person to get those 2 cats' names right was Braden Lim. Braden Lim guessed B and Mo, and that is, in fact, the correct answer. So Braden, do me a favor, email me, thegingerrunner@gmail.com, and we'll make sure we'll get you in touch with Julbo, and you get your own pair of Julbo sunglasses, which I'm super jealous about. I have a couple pairs, and I want those Eagle Eye things, the ones with the really nice lenses. They seem to be really awesome. So congratulations. That's really, really excellent. Rob, I know that I've been keeping you for a very long time. I can tell I'm keeping him from dinner. I want to make sure that I congratulate Rob Krar for his 2nd victory at Western States 100. An incredible time, just a few seconds off of course record on a very brutally hot day amongst some of the best ultra runners in the world. For those of you who are watching live, Rob, where can they find you and show you some love on social media?
Yeah, for sure. I kept it pretty simple. I think I'm Rob Krar across the board on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I do have a Facebook athlete page right now, but it's called Rob Krar as well. So I'm getting better, but I'm still a rookie in the social media scene for sure.
You got to get that engagement, Rob. That engagement, that social engagement.
All about the engagement. Yeah.
And we got to get you using that GoPro and editing like daily videos. We got to have Rob Krar daily vlogs. It'd be amazing.
I got to get that content for sure.
The content and the engagement, you got to get it all. So go follow him if you aren't already. I'm sure most of you are, but if you are not, do it and drop him a line congratulating him, because what a performance this weekend at one of the biggest stages on the planet. It's essentially ultra running Super Bowl, and Rob just killed it. So, you know, give him some love. That is it for tonight's Ginger Runner Live episode. We'll have a very brief post show. I just want to talk about the beer I'm drinking, the beer Rob's drinking, and maybe ask one or two more questions from the chat room. But he's got dinner to eat, and we've got dinner to eat. So it'll be very, very brief. So if you would like to stick around for the post show, just stay online. We're going to do that pretty much right after the credits. I appreciate all of you tuning in live tonight. I know we are a little bit late. It will not always be that. So next Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll see you for another Ginger Runner Live. And that's pretty much it. Follow me on all the social networks. Over on Twitter, it's at The Ginger Runner. Facebook, The Ginger Runner. On Instagram, it's at Ethan Newberry. And Patreon.com/The Ginger Runner is a great place to help support everything that we got going on here, including films that I'm very excited to be making, including the FKT attempt by Gary Robbins around Mount Rainier, happening in 2 days, which I will be...
Go Gary.
Yeah, go Gary Robbins, because this is going to be a pretty brutal day, and it's going to be really fun to document on film. And I'll be periscoping as well, which is, you know, that new app that's all the kids are using. So why not? So we'll be periscoping along the route as well. That'll be a lot of fun this week. So that's it. We'll see you guys in the post show. Stick around. 1 second. All right, Rob, obviously I know, like, I don't want to keep you from dinner or anything like that. I think there's a couple of questions that people are asking as far as, like, what are the best shoes ever? And I'm like, you can't answer that question because every human's foot is different. People are talking about great shows, super educational, people were really enjoying it, and all the information that you had to drop. If you could give anyone one piece of advice for a hot race, whether it's a 100-miler or even a 5K or a 10K, what would be the best advice for a hot race?
Well, I mean, that's two really different things, a 5 or 10K compared to an ultra. You know, you're not going to be stopping at cruise stations for 5 or 10K. So I think you always have to adjust your expectations, whether it's a 5 or 10K or an ultra. Heat is going to limit your potential on that given day, I would say. Obviously, my experience is with ultras, and I believe so strongly that ice is king. You know, a lot of people like to do heat training, but for me, you know, I question the effectiveness of it, and it's also just kind of crosses the threshold of what I'm willing to do in preparation for an ultra. It's just not something I find desirable. And ice, it's incredible. I mean, it was hot, don't get me wrong, but it was manageable. You know, 2013, the first year I ran was well over 100 degrees for most of the race, and closer to 110 and through the canyons. And again, it was hot, but it was manageable with ice. So ice is king.
Yeah. So when you talk about ice is king, and locations of ice, I can imagine is probably also very specific. Are you hitting the hot blood spots like neck, underarms, arms, head, stuff like that? Or is there a specific formula to your ice application?
Yeah, I think, you know, for convenience and what works, right? Putting ice in a hat is very easy and effective, and it drizzles down to the rest of your body. Getting your arteries in around your neck is important, and there's been a lot of research in the wrist, as the wrist being the most effective means of cooling the temperature down. So those custom North Face arm warmers were key in that respect.
I definitely will be utilizing some of that this summer. I had a question earlier about the beer that I am drinking. I totally spaced before the show started. I am I'm staying in my buddy's house, Justin, who's been in a number of Ginger Runner films and stuff like that. He's crewed me in numerous races and will crew me at Cascade Crest 100 Miler next month. I stole one of his really good beers. Ninkasi Total Domination India Pale Ale. This stuff is awesome. So I've been enjoying it in a Seahawks ice cold mug. Rob, are you enjoying some post-race recovery beer currently from one of your favorite breweries?
Yes. Nice. Well, the IPA, you know, it's interesting. I swore off IPAs. Well, I guess I never got into them, but I have been getting into them, and I'm enjoying them. They're great. But tonight I'm drinking Sriracha Sake from Wanderlust Brewery. It's a Finnish saison. What's really cool is Nathan harvested down juniper branches from, you know, locally in the area, and he added that to the mash early on in the process. And yep, it's pretty delicious.
I gotta drop Nathan an email because I remember the beer that I had at Wanderlust was amazing. I got to get some of that and see if we can get some to LA. People are calling you the Tom Brady of ultras. I would put Krar on a whole nother level than Tom Brady because I can't see Tom Brady running much further than 100 yards, the football quarterback field length.
Yeah, he would lose his air really early in that race.
It would be a whole another version of Deflategate. What watches are you using for your ultras? Yeah, how are you tracking your stuff? Because I saw that you just uploaded Western to Strava. What watch did you end up using for the run?
Yeah, so I've been using Suuntos for either 2 or 3 years. I think it may have been all 3 Westerns I've been in the Suunto. So I have the Ambit 2, which is has about a 15-ish hour battery life with the 1 second tracking, which I wear for my hundreds. And then in training, I'm wearing the Suunto Ambit 3S, which is just a little smaller. Battery life is shorter, but it works for, you know, 95% of the running I do. They've been great, and yeah, I upload that data to I guess Moves Count, and then that gets transferred to Strava. And I've been sharing some of my training runs, and I think every race I post on Strava as well.
So what's the next race, or I don't know if you're doing any sort of adventure runs or FKTs or anything like that, but what's the next big stage for you?
Oh man, I have a busy year for sure. Starting next Sunday is the start of my ultra running camp here in Flagstaff.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. I totally forgot about that. That's going to be awesome.
It is. It is. I'm really excited about it. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but you know, Flagstaff is great in itself. We're gonna hit our favorite trails in the mountains, in the inner basin, get up real high. But we're also going to the Grand Canyon one day. We're gonna hit Sedona. I mean, those 2 days in themselves are bucket list type of days. So yeah, it's gonna be a great camp. Then I got some traveling here and there for the rest of July. I'm going to be out east or in the Midwest doing some work with the North Face Endurance Challenge races, visiting some North Face stores out there. So that'll be really cool. Haven't been back to the Midwest in a long time. Went to school there at Butler University. And then what's after that? Trans Rockies. I'm going to hit Trans Rockies again with my good friend Mike Smith, who I've raced Trans Rockies with 3 times in the past. Amazing experience. It's like adult camp in the mountains. You can't go wrong with it. And then we'll be back for about a week, and then I'm heading to UTMB. Christine and I will both be over there for 2 weeks with the race kind of sandwiched in the middle. Really excited about that one. And you know, very tentatively, I have UTMF a month later on the calendar. So. And then the North Face Endurance Challenge in December. Yeah, so big year. A lot on the calendar.
That's pretty awesome. But I feel like each race kind of builds to the next. It sounds like each experience is kind of leading up to the next. So that should be really fun. Be really cool to kind of follow how things unfold. And the camp, being able to go to Sedona and the Grand Canyon all within the same camp, that sounds awesome. Just my brief visit to Flagstaff and being able to do that was like, how is this not an everyday? I would live here, and it was incredible. It was awesome.
I mean, again, I'm biased, but I really believe Flagstaff is one of the greatest places in the world to be an ultra runner. You have everything at your fingertips. Very thankful to have fallen into Flagstaff. You know, I moved here not as a runner. It was going to be a temporary stop, but it seems to be a common story. You know, people's car breaks down the side of the road in Flagstaff, and they're here 30 years later. But yeah, I'm really excited about the camp. We've had a couple last minute cancellations. There are a couple spots left, so if anybody's interested, get in touch with me.
Yeah, in the chat room, someone's asking if there is a minimal pace to join the camp. Do you have to be an elite or a fast, or can anyone join?
No, we've really kept it open for the most part. You know, we would hope people arrive healthy and relatively fit with some ultra experience. But we're going to have a number of groups. That's the thing about Flagstaff. The list of volunteers, people who have been living in Flagstaff for years and know the trails really well, is very long. So we're going to have 3 different groups on each run, different paces. I'll be hopping along in each group throughout the week. So. No, I think it's very open to various ability levels.
That'll be really, really great. So if anyone's interested in that, is there a website they can go to, perhaps, to find out more information on how they can join?
Yep, it's pretty simple. robkrarultracamp.com. And then they can also find me on social media, send me a message, direct message, and get in touch.
Awesome. Just having briefly stayed in Flagstaff with this crew and kind of getting out there on some of the trails, it is incredible. And go to Pizzacletta for pizza, go to Wanderlust for beer, and there's plenty of good coffee shops in town. And just watch out for the trains that go through, because it takes up a lot of time driving back and forth between certain parts of the city. People are talking about rim to rim to rim. Are you planning on doing that again at any point, or since you have the FKT, is that like you're good with that?
Man, the Grand Canyon. Complicated answers to any Grand Canyon question. That FKT I set, you know, I'm really proud of it. It was a magical day, and it took a lot of really good fortune to run that time. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and thankfully nothing did for me. I think I have maxed out my ability in the canyon, and I won't be going for the FKT again. But canyon's amazing, very powerful. I've had some amazing some of the best days of my life in there, and also some of my most frightening. So I use it as a training tool. You know, it's interesting. This year I was planning on hitting the canyon twice in my preparation for Western States. First run went really great. Got 30+ miles, fantastic day. A couple days before I was planning on heading in again. It's hard to describe, but I had a bad feeling about it. It was kind of this bad energy I was getting. Almost felt like I was being a little too greedy. And that's important. You really have to respect the power of the canyon. So no FKTs, but I'm sure I'll be back to playing it again relatively soon.
See, you mentioned that, and Ian Torrance and even Vargo and Alicia at the Wanderlust Brewery show, people were talking kind of that same sort of respect the canyon, understand that it is far more powerful than you will ever be. We did a very brief run in the canyon before we left Flagstaff, and I talked a bit about it on the show. I have footage from it, but I haven't uploaded the footage yet. So I was just going to do a real brief dip down towards Indian Gardens on Bright Angel with Alicia, and obviously she's much faster than I. So when we started running back out, she took off, and a storm moved in very suddenly, and it turned into lightning, thunder, hail, rain. It was crazy what happened. And here I am with my GoPro on essentially a lightning rod sticking out of my back, and this is my first time ever running in the canyon. I was pretty terrified coming out of that place. It's a reverse mountain, so it's so weird to run down, 3,000 or 4,000 feet and then turn around and have to climb up that much in a hailstorm in an environment that you're terrified of. It was weird. It was like, I shouldn't be here. This is not the day.
It's a perfect example of how shit can hit the fan very quickly and unexpectedly. It's a hostile environment in the canyon, especially the further down you go and the closer to the hottest months of the year. Respect is paramount for sure.
For sure. Rob, I'm going to let you go. Everyone who's watching live, I appreciate it very much. We'll see you guys next Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for another Ginger Runner Live, episode number 73. Big ups to Rob Krar on an incredible performance this weekend at Western States. Another championship under his belt. He's got 2 now. Pretty damn amazing. So props to Rob Krar. Go follow him on social media at Rob Krar, or just search Rob Krar and pretty much take you anywhere. That is Rob Krar-centric. And you guys are amazing for watching live. We'll see you guys next week. I appreciate it. Train hard, race harder, party hardest. We'll see you then. Bye.